Welcome. Good morning. Welcome to Better Together Fest 2024. Today, we are talking about how to get your business goals to align with your life goals. Because I am a big fan of the idea that if you start your own business, it is because you are not getting something that you want out of your professional life. Like, that's why people start businesses. Sometimes the thing you're not getting is a schedule that is flexible enough to allow you to handle caregiving responsibilities. Sometimes what you're not getting is pay that will cover the cost of living in the place that you live. Maybe you're not getting retirement accounts. Maybe you're not getting a work environment that really works for your needs. I have ADHD and I'm pretty dyslexic, and the combination of the two, plus my somewhat combative and opinionated personality, means that I'm actually unemployable. Like, straight up, my ability to hold down a job is junk. But when I started my own business, I've been successfully employed for the last 8 years. Really haven't changed jobs, have not fired myself. Have not gotten frustrated with myself and rage quit. Managed to avoid a lot of those pitfalls I had in my professional life. So we're going to talk about how you can do whatever it is you're trying to do in your business, because I assume that your goals are different than mine, and you should be able to meet them. So who am I? I am Jessi. I am the founder of Outgrow Your Garage. My background is actually in seasonal employment, urban farming, summer camps, experiential education. I spent a lot of years teaching ecology to middle schoolers, right? So how do I teach these weird, complex, systemic concepts to people who are really way more interested in looking at that pine tree over there? Then I went into landscaping and discovered that business owners are not that different from middle schoolers. You got a lot going on. There's a lot of things that pull your attention. It is really hard to come up with a system that works for your business. It is hard to understand these complex concepts that require all these different pieces to bring them together, set them up in a way that works for your business. And I went, I just spent 10 years doing that for middle schoolers. I bet I can do that for business owners in terms of creating systems and operations that work. Lo and behold, I can, and I do, and I love it. I am a serial entrepreneur. Like I said, this is my second business. And I really believe that entrepreneurship is one of the greatest metrics and measures of change in the world right now. If you can support new businesses, if you can support small businesses, then you are more effectively able to create change within your community. If you are a business owner and you are running a successful business, your ability to be involved in your community is expanded by both your time, but also the time of your business. So I really have a lot of feelings about that. And I like to teach other people how to make change in their communities via their business. So what does that mean for you? I like to teach operational skills that anybody can implement. Today, that's going to be looking at what your goals of your business are, and then how do you set a budget in both time and dollars to get there. That's our goal. So first thing, write down in some capacity, whether that's on your phone, whether that's on your notepad, how do you want your business to contribute to your life? What is that interaction? Anybody want to share?
I want to educate women to believe in themselves and to fund national travel for our YouTube channel.
There you go. Traveling, I want my business to fund travel is awesome. Awesome. So when you think about these, right, your budget matters for getting to that, right? If you want the money to travel, if you want the money to have flexibility, if you want the money to be able to bring joy and not have to worry all the time where you have that stress of like, am I going to be able to pay my rent? Am I going to be able to pay my mortgage? Am I going to be able to cover if an emergency happens, right? How are these things going to be? You need a good budget, right? We need a good budget in our personal lives. We need a good budget in our business. And so your budget, it really helps you. It helps you plan. It helps you keep things organized. You can track spending, and it creates a framework. And so what we're really going to look at today is how do you set your budget up in a way to track whether or not your business is going to get to those personal goals that you have. And they will change, right? So what is the amount of dollars it will take to be a sustainable income? I don't know. It depends on where you live. It depends on what your needs are. It depends on the size of your family. It depends on what types of things you like to do with your free time. It depends on whether or not your extended family or your extended support network lives in the same town you do. Depends whether or not you need a car or whether anybody in your life has special needs. Like that sustainable income number changes with age, it changes with life changes, it changes with geographic location. So really thinking about what are those numbers that you need. So how do we feel about our budgeting skills? Right? I got some like thumbs down. I got some like shaky things. So take a hot second, talk to your neighbor. Where are you at with your budgeting right now? All right. So some things I heard in that were that my budgeting skills suck. My time management is terrible. I really should be doing a better job at this, but I'm not. I'm really good at telling other people how to do it. My business is new and I haven't figured out the processes yet. So yeah, like alleviating some of that stress is what I'm really hoping to give you some tools for. But also, I encourage you to remove the word should from your business vocabulary. It makes us feel really lousy. Like, yes, we should do lots of things. But one of the things that I think is really true is figuring out, and that we get to do as business owners, is really figuring out what do you want to do and how do you get the stuff done that needs to get done, but maybe it doesn't need to get done by you. And one of the things that I work on in my business, because I am in the same boat as anybody who is taking a lower or non-existent paycheck in their business in order to get the business to grow faster, right? You're funneling all that energy back into the business. And so one of the things that I really split in my head is, here is what the business needs to happen. Here is what I am capable of doing and what makes sense for me to do. And here is what I really need to be working towards getting off my plate. Because the business needs it to happen either way. But I don't have to be the one to do it forever. So if I can get through this period of time, right? So right now, that is, I just finished building a workshop catalog for all the workshops that I am available to give in 2024. I hated writing that the entire time, like 100%. Everything about it was awful. And I was like, oh, I really need to be doing that. But if I can get it done and I can start doing those workshops, it makes my time management a lot easier. It makes it really clear for what my offerings are. And next time it needs to get done, I will probably have the budget to hire someone else to do it, right? So I have to do this now because it has to get done. But then later, somebody else can do it for me, right? That's part of that budgeting process. One of my goals is to not have to do the stuff I don't like. What does my budget need to be for that? So we have a time budget and a money budget. And I think it's really important to separate those, right? They operate a little bit differently and your business has both. The key thing is that they are limited in different ways, right? Your company is always going to have, this is the amount of revenue that we bring in. Here is the dollars that come into our house. We cannot spend more than those dollars. And you have the same concept of time. This is the amount of time available in this business. But you can create more time in your business in a way that is harder to do than creating more money, right? You can hire people and then your business suddenly has more time to do things. You can get software that makes some tasks faster. That creates more time in your business. So really being intentional of, where do I need to bring in more money? Where do I need to create more time? Right? As you think about that. And then that will depend on what you need in your personal life, right? Lots of people start businesses because, particularly women, because they have some sort of caregiving responsibility. So maybe the thing you need to do is be able to generate enough revenue to pay for a second person in your business so your business has full-time capacity. Maybe it takes 2 or 3 people in your business in order to get to 40 or 60 hours a week of hours that your business has to work. Those don't all have to be you. So really thinking about, like, where do you need more time and where do you need more money? Creating time does cost money. And so that's part of what you're building into your dollars budget. And you can use your money budget to plan your time budget. The other thing I like to note in terms of time budgets is how many of you have ever had a job where they were like, you have infinite time, right? I can give you these really insane deadlines and you will just magically meet them. Yeah, don't do that to yourself, right? Don't do that to your staff. So be realistic about what that time budget is and grant yourself grace. I learned through the process of building this presentation catalog that made me want to stab my eyeballs out the entire time. I was like, I want to be doing anything else but this thing that has to get done for my business. But I could do it in 90-minute chunks, right? And sometimes that meant I only worked for 90 minutes that day because that 90 minutes was so hard for my brain to write it down and build the copy and focus on and write the legend and figure out the target audience and make sure all the work, like that was really hard for me. So sometimes it meant I only worked 90 minutes that day. Okay, great. Then I only worked 90 minutes that day because that was the available time that my brain did. And if I took the rest of the day to do something that was relaxing for me, the project got done. Whereas if I made myself sit at the computer all day and be like, I'm going to sit here until it gets done, it's never going to get done. I'm just going to be burned out and mad about it. So being realistic of like, what is the amount of time you can do it? I check my email in 10-minute chunks. I set a timer. I do it for 10 minutes. I go away. I do something else. I do 10 more minutes. My email stays up to date. When I was like, no, I'm going to just get it done, I never got it done. So really thinking about what does that time look like for you? So when we think about budgeting, right, you have an average amount of money available to spend in a week or a month, right? What stage your business is in and how your business gets revenue in means this may change. My background is in landscaping. I knew at the end of June if I would be able to meet my bills in January because 80% of my income came into my company in May and June. That was where our money came in. And so then I had that time, that leeway to make sure that I picked up extra jobs or do the things, but that was my big money-making season. And so knowing when that happens made my choices different than this business that I have now, where I have a much steadier stream of revenue. We make about the same money every month because a lot of our money comes in from workshop subscriptions or course subscriptions. So great subscription model business. It's kind of the same every time. How much do you need to bring in to cover expenses? And if you're a solopreneur or you're a business owner, there's two sets of expenses, right? How much does my business need to cover its expenses? How much do I need to be taking out of my business in order to cover my life expenses, right? Those are two different numbers. How much money do you need for additional business growth, right? So in landscaping, I knew that 80% of my revenue was going to come in May and June. So I needed to make sure that that covered the other 10 months of income, right? Now I don't. And so now what I'm thinking about is, okay, this amount of subscriptions, here's how many subscriptions I need at this level in order to be able to hire another person. This is where that money comes in. So really being intentional of how much money do you need for future expenses and what is that breakdown? And then things that matter, right? So here are your 3 incoming money terms, right? Money comes in, it's called revenue. Your gross profit is the dollars that are left over after the dollars that you have spent to make that revenue, right? So anything that is directly contributed. So I like to think of this as in your household budget, your revenue is what your gross pay is, right? The amount of money your salary is $100,000 a year, great. That would be revenue in a business. Your gross profit is what's left over after taxes, right? So when you have a business, if you have a product, right? I make this Yeti mug. Yeti's gross profit is the amount of money left over from this mug after they have paid for the materials to make it, right? If you're a service-based business, your gross profit is what's left over after the time that you spent to make that, to like do that, right? That's your hourly wage for billable hours. And after any like materials and stuff that you did, that kind of stuff. So like the things you actually had to do in order to earn that revenue. Net profit is what's left over after you pay for everything else in your business, right? So insurance is overhead, software subscriptions are overhead. Anything that doesn't change, no matter how many sales you make. If you have to pay for it, no matter what your business does, it's overhead. If the cost fluctuates based on how many sales you make, it's probably cost of goods. Cool. Outgoing money. So cost of goods, like we just said, is what you spend directly to create your product or service. It changes as your sales change, right? This is one of the areas producing your service or product more efficiently is one of the ways that you can increase your profit and get more money out of your business. Your overhead is what you spend to keep your business running, right? This is rent, this is insurance, this is salaried payroll, this is administrative help in your business. This is the amount of dollars you pay yourself to do those admin tasks, right? So when you are thinking about it, as you are building your budget, whether you are paying yourself or not, include those numbers in your budget so you know how much money you need to make in order to pay yourself. And when you think about those calculations, right, some of that answer is going to be, if I were paying someone else to do this, what would it cost me? Start there as your baseline, and then you can go up. If you are paying yourself, how much do you want to be making next year, 5 years down the line? Include those numbers in the future. Make sure you are paying yourself at least market rate for the jobs that you're doing. Whatever market rate means in your industry. And if you have, again, specific questions about that, come find me at the table. I will have long, extended conversations with you about how to make sure your budget and your thinking about how you're building it works for you all day long. Women entrepreneurs underpay themselves at like gross insane rates. And I have a lot of conversations with new business owners in which I say, double your rates. And they're like, how did you know? Every mentor I've had who's looked at my rate sheet has told me to double my rates. And I'm like, because new entrepreneurs always undercharge themselves, just double your rates, right? Like that's very common. So yes, really pay yourself what you're worth. So when you are starting, right, you list the things that you are spending money on and you list the places that money is coming in. And then when you spend money out, you go, okay, here's what I spent. Here's where it came in, right? I like to use a spreadsheet because then the spreadsheet does the math for you and you can set it up to average and all that kind of stuff. And I don't think our spreadsheet terminology handout is in the freebie at the end of this presentation. So if you swing by the booth and let me know, I'll write down your email somewhere and I can email you this is the handout for common spreadsheet formulas. It's great. It's a great little handout. But once you have your revenue, once you have your expenses, basic subtraction. Revenue minus cost of goods gives you gross profit. Gross profit minus overhead gives you net profit. Net profit is what your business makes. That's what you pay taxes on, right? So when we complain that corporations aren't paying their taxes, Amazon's not paying their taxes, it's because they're using loopholes to say, no, we didn't make any net profit. Everything went into overhead. We didn't make any money. So we call it Hollywood accounting, right? They're always like, oh yeah, that business didn't make any money. We can't pay out any net profits. We didn't make any net profits because we charged ourselves. So those pieces. So that's your main budget piece, right? How much are you making? How much are you spending? What's left over? So when you think about that, what are the key pieces? And you can either talk to your neighbor about this or you can write it down depending on where your brain is. What are the things that are going to be important in your business budget? Where are the places that your revenue comes in that you can bring in enough to get to those goals you talked about in the beginning? Where are the places that maybe your business needs to save money to get to those goals you talked about in the beginning? What are the rates that you need to be paying yourself to get to those goals? So take a few minutes, write that down, talk about it to your neighbor if you want, but take a few minutes to
5 things I want to get done this week.
All right. So,
Just break it down to 5 steps.
bring it on in. If you were involved in a really great conversation, you want to continue, they have conveniently put all of those tables out in the front. So after this workshop, go continue talking to each other about your budget. But in the meantime, your key things, right? Here are your biggest points to remember. Your budget is going to determine the lowest rate at which you can charge, right? You cannot charge less for your services and cost of goods than you are paying to generate those cost of goods. So having a really solid understanding of how much money it costs to run your business, including the unpaid time that you put into it, that you will either eventually be paying yourself for or paying someone else to do. Make sure you're putting that in. You will notice I keep saying that a lot. As women, we are very, very, very accustomed in society to do a lot of unpaid work and unrecognized work. So don't do that in your business. Break that cycle. Yeah.
What do you recommend for keeping me in check? Because I'm still gonna do that unchecked. Like there's gonna be things that I add in
Yeah,
without
great.
realizing like, oh.
Track your time.
No, but do you understand like, oh, that's something I should be charging for?
So
It's
when
not
you,
like anything and everything that has to do with my business at all.
yes,
Right.
if it is related to your business, it needs to be in your expenses, right? And so there are some things that will kind of like fall outside of that. So like I read a lot of books, right? I straight up have Acro Garage actually has a book recommendation list that we put, and I have personally read every single book that's on it, right? And then we're building another community recommendations list for ones that people have said, these are good business books, but I haven't personally read. But like we have a list, and I'm adding to it a lot. So that isn't necessarily time I bill to my business because that's like thinking time. But as soon as I sit down to check my email, if I'm having a conversation with a client, if I'm spending time planning how a proposal is going to operate, if I'm spending time brainstorming what my pricing structure is going to look like, all of that time I spent whacking my head against the wall, being like, I really need to write this presentation catalog. That time, right, that I spent sitting down thinking about what do I need to do to get ready to write this presentation catalog? That all counts as time I'm spending in my business because if I were paying somebody else, that time to open up the file and find the things that they need and look up the information, just because that all lives in my head and I sat there and thought about it and how to set up, it doesn't mean that wasn't time I wasn't working, right? So my personal metric for this is if I was annoyed I wasn't getting paid for it when I was employed by other people, it's paid in my business, right? And so that's a really solid metric because the other thing that does is as I bring staff in, that flexibility and not overloading people is already built in, right? So we have time. One of the rules of thumb I have heard some businesses starting to use that I really like and I will be adopting as my business grows. Our goal is to get I have 3 people on my team now. I'd like to get to 10 by the end of 2025. That's a big jump. So one of the things we're really thinking about is everybody should function at an 80% baseline, right? You are able to get 100% of your work done in 80% of your working hours, which leaves you the flexibility to do other things, to deal with stuff that comes up. It also leaves you time to do future planning. It leaves you time to do SOP writing. It leaves you time to navigate changes, research things that you need to do for your business. But then that also means if somebody in your business goes on vacation, there's space in everybody's workload to be able to do it. Because that's what else you want to think about in your business is how are you going to take time off? What does that look like? And so like Bree, who's also presenting later today, she had a baby a while back and she took a bunch of time off from maternity leave. And she's a solopreneur, so she had to set that up in her business. And I guarantee you, if you go find Bree and say, hey, how did you plan your maternity leave? She would love to help you figure that out in your business. Like Bree's awesome. She would love to have that conversation. So ask for that help when you're trying to figure it out, right? Whether it's me, whether it's somebody else at this conference, whether it's somebody you met, whether it's an internet group that you're a part of, there are people in your life who want to help, right? And they're the same people who want to help all the time, right? They're the same people who like when you're sick and everybody in your house has the flu and you can't, who is going to drop the soup on your front step but not walk into the door of your house because they don't want whatever you have? Who leaves you food on the front step, right? Those people are going to help you in your business too, right? They're happy to help you think through some of those problems. Maybe they pitch in if you need an extra hand. Maybe they become a contractor for a little while. And you can think of really interesting outside the box sources. So one of the things I do sometimes is I have a 17-year-old niece down in Texas. And sometimes I need somebody to like filter through a bunch of stuff on our HubSpot and just like make sure that the contact information, like the first name and the last name are in the right spot and the email isn't weird and they're not duplicated and you just have to like clean up that data a little bit. Great. She definitely wants to make $100 to look through my contacts in really clear structures. And that's time I don't have to spend, right? Everybody wins there. So there's probably people in your life like that too. For some of that stuff that's just easy, get it off your plate. There might be spaces, so ask for help. And it's your business. You get to decide what you want to spend time on. You get to decide what your rates are. And my firm belief is you charge as high as people are willing to pay. Like, bump it up, you can always drop it back down, right? But if you start low, it's really hard to go up. So start higher than you think and knock it down if you need. Because that's how you get paid enough for you to meet those goals. Don't undersell yourself. Cool. So, excellent. We ran through this quick enough that I think we're still going to end on time. And then we'll have a little bit of time for Q&A. So, after this presentation, resources that you have, right? Take a few minutes and write this down. Where does your business, where do you want it to be in a year? Do you want to hire more staff? Do you want to buy additional equipment? Do you want to give raises? What are your goals in your business? And what are the dollar amounts associated with those? And what are the time budgets associated with those? You don't have to know all those answers right now, but like spend some time starting to brainstorm that out. We'll take like 3 or 4 minutes. Yeah. And for those of you writing, don't forget to give yourself dollar amounts. If you want to give yourself a raise, what is that raise amount? How many dollars is it? If you want to buy equipment, how much do you think that's going to cost? Anywhere you can plug in $1, put in $1. All right. Focus on up here. Pull out your phone and open up the calculator. We're gonna do a little exercise that I often don't have time for, but today we kind of got a little bit of wiggle room. I expanded this presentation from 30 minutes to 60 minutes, so I feel like I have so much time. So great. All right. So input into your calculator the amount of take-home pay you want from your business to come into your household to meet the goals that you set at the beginning of this. Put that number into your calculator. Annually. That's an excellent question. Annually. All right. Multiply that by 1.15. So that's 15% is how you do that. That 15% is the amount of that take-home pay that is going to go to Social Security and Medicare taxes as an independent contractor. Multiply that number that you now have, right? So hit equal or whatever. Multiply it again by 1.30, which is 30% for income taxes. And then multiply that again by 1.10, so another 10%, which covers things like health insurance, kind of like your add-on costs in your households that would often be covered by an employer.
Sorry, can we back up to the beginning?
Yes. So amount you want to make per year,
Yep.
You're going to multiply by 15%, which is 1.15.
Yep.
You're going to multiply it again by 30%, which is 1.30. And then you're going to multiply it one more time by another 10%, which is 1.10.
And that last 10% is?
Health insurance, oddball stuff that like health insurance, 401k, retirement, all that stuff that employers often cover, but you as a self-employed person do not get covered, right? So that's like your cushion, wiggle room, covers like inflation raises. And then hit equal. Mm-hmm. That's the number you're striving for in your net profit at minimum. That's what gives you room to grow, ability to pay your taxes, ability to cover Social Security and Medicaid. That's the number you're really aiming for if what you want is that original take-home pay to come into your house. How many of you are undercharging? Right? Some of us, right? So like really think about that. So when you're thinking about that business and that goals budget, remember that it's actually a much higher number for you to be left with the amount that you want. Because you have to pay taxes. You're paying the same income taxes you were paying before, right? when you were self-employed. But you really need to think about like what is the leftover amount? What is that take-home pay? But you're not having those taxes automatically pulled out of your paycheck. Yeah.
The 15% number, the first figure was for what?
Social Security, Medicaid. So second one is actual income taxes, right? And your income tax bracket might be higher, it might be lower, depending on where you're at. But yeah, I like to put it as 30 as like a good starting point. And then there are lots of tax attorneys out there who would like to help you figure out exactly what your tax burden is. But I like 30% as like a good starting point, right? So if you like multiply all that together, you get 55%. So whatever you want to take home, be charging at least 50% more than that in order to leave as your actual net revenue. So thinking about those kinds of things, there is all these hidden costs. So when you're thinking about what that budget needs to be, what your take-home pay needs to be, you want it to be much higher than where you are actually aiming for, because you want to allow for other expenses. And you want to be giving yourself a raise every year. If you're not giving yourself a raise, at least the cost of the amount of inflation every year, you're giving yourself a pay cut. Cool. So that's what I got for you. If you want to give me some feedback, I stole this from Krista, just for the record. Krista was like, you should use Tagadot in your presentations. So if you scan the QR code, you give me some feedback. There's some free worksheets out there. Like I said, I don't think there's one on job costing that's up there. There's one on like how to track your hourly pay. There's a couple of different budgeting ones. I don't think the spreadsheet handout is in there. So if it's not, you can email me or stop by the desk and I'll write your email down to send it to you. But yeah, give me some feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent.